Greetings to my tech heads out there in the KevTechify nation, and if you're new here, welcome. In this episode, we're going to look at web and email protocols. We'll be discussing hypertext transfer protocol and hypertext markup language. We'll look at HTTP and HTTPS, and then we'll talk about some email protocols that include SMTP, POP, and Imap. This episode is part of my series on Introduction to Networks for the CCNA. I'm Kevin here at KevTechify. Let's get this adventure started. First we're going to look at here is HTTP and the hypertext markup language, HTTP and HTML. This is a process in which a client requests a web page from a server. And there's basically 4 steps to this. The first step here is entering in the URL. And there's 3 parts to this URL. The first one is the protocol or scheme. That's what's represented here by the HTTP. Now, you could have different protocols in there, HTTP, HTTPS, you could have FTP. That represents what type of communication and protocol we're using to send data. Next, we have the server name. The server name is represented by a domain name. In this example, we have www.cisco.com. And the third part here is the specific file we're asking for. The specific file that we're asking for in this example is index.html. Sometimes this last part is optional. What the server can do is set it up where if you don't specify a certain file, by default, we're going to give you the file named this. And a lot of times it's index.html or default.htm. It depends upon the type of server, but there is a default document. The second step here takes that domain name and turns it into an IP address. We use the DNS server. Once we have that IP address, then we initiate the HTTP request. What that HTTP request does is we send a GET request. We're sending a GET that the server will get the web page we are requesting, and specifically we are looking for the index.html page. The third step is the response. The server gets that request in, makes a response, sends it back to the client. That's where the HTML code gets sent from the server back to the client. And finally, fourth step is the web browser then takes that HTML and deciphers it, turns it into that beautiful web page we have with all the graphics and nicely formatted text. It's beautiful in your web browser. Those are the 4 steps typically that happen with HTTP and HTML. When we look at web traffic, typically we have 2 different protocols we use. We use HTTP and HTTPS. HTTP stands for Hypertext Protocol, but then the S at the end stands for secure. And what the secure does is it encrypts the data between the server and the client. As we use HTTP and HTTPS, as we use HTTP and HTTPS, there are 3 common message types that we have here. 3 common types are a GET, a POST, and a PUT. The GET is what the client uses to request a web page from the server. The POST is where the client uploads data to the web server. And you can think of this as a form where you're going through and you're entering in fields in your web browser and you click submit. That is typically a POST. And then the last one is a PUT. What a PUT does is allows you to upload resources to a web server, like an image or something like that. Email protocols allow us to send email across the internet. Let's take a look here at this graphic. Down here we have a sender. The sender is sending an email address to this address right here, recipient@cisco.com. And what happens is on their computer, they write this email, they send it out, and it goes out through their local router, in across the internet, bounces around, finally gets to the edge router where your email server's at, gets to your email server right here, And then what happens is the email server sends it from your email server to the recipient's email server. It goes across the internet. It uses SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. And then once it's at the recipient's email server, that recipient email uses either IMAP or POP3. POP3 is a post office protocol to get that email, that information off of their own mail server, so that way the recipient can read the email. SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, that's responsible from getting email from the sender. So when you type up your email on your device, computer, laptop, smartphone, you send it to your email server. It goes to your email server. That's where we use the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. It's responsible from getting it from the originating device to its email server. SMTP is responsible for moving it from the originating email server to the recipient's email server. We use the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol to transfer that email from the sending email server to the receiving email server. Then we can either use POP or IMAP to get that information off of the server. What POP does is that it actually downloads that information. It pulls that information off of the server, puts it on the recipient's device, and basically erases it from the server. It removes that email from the server and puts it on the client. It is no longer on the server. IMAP, on the other hand, is what most of us are used to. IMAP is what smart devices use. That's typically what your web client uses. IMAP is a protocol that sends the information to the recipient in their web browser, in their smartphone, but it leaves the email on the server. And basically it sends just the view of the email. And that's how we can view our email from our smartphone, from our desktops, from our laptops. We can use multiple devices to use that with IMAP. Now, if we go back and use POP, it pulls it off of the server and it downloads it to that one device. So you have to be on that device to see it. IMAP allows multiple devices to see your email. It was my pleasure to provide you with this wonderful episode on web and email protocols. If you like this episode and you got value out of it, please click the like button, give a 5-star rating, leave a comment. This all helps me bring you more great content. Please take a minute to subscribe to my channel. All my socials and contact information are on my website, KevTechify.com. There you can find out how to get all these episodes in video and podcast form. In the upper right is my playlist for my series on Introduction to Networks for the CCNA. In the bottom right is one of my favorite videos that I linked just for you. Thank you so much for watching this episode of my series on Introduction to Networks for the CCNA. Once again, I'm Kevin. This is KevTechify. I'll see you next time for another great adventure.